Hello and good morning. I'm Jamey from Stonemaier Games, and thank you for joining me for today's Stonemaier Games and various variety show livecast here at what is it, 10 a.m. in here in St. Louis at least. Yeah, I hope you're doing well. I have a lot of different topics on my notes today, including some topics that I mentioned in the subject of today's livecast: birds, fish, cats, and hockey. But I also didn't want to forget that today is a Rolling Realms live play day, or live play week, really. This is once a month where I play through 3 different combinations of realms for Rolling Realms. And I'll be doing that at 3 o'clock. So that's in 5 hours from now. I'll be doing that on YouTube, and it'll be on our Facebook group, our Rolling Realms Facebook group, soon after that. Today's realms, let's see what we're doing. We're doing Charterstone, My Little Scythe, and Millennium Blades. I always just randomize my big stack of realms to determine what we're going to play this week. So I'm looking forward to that. As usual, I'm here to answer any questions that you have about anything regarding, I don't know, really anything. Stonemaier Games, me, cats, birds, fish, anything you'd like. In fact, just today on Blue Sky, I posted about one of the things that we did this past weekend was go to the World Bird Sanctuary, where they had an eagle day, and we got to get pretty close to some of the eagles that they have at this sanctuary. This is a place where they rehabilitate birds who are injured. They keep birds safe if they can't be released back into the wild based on some injuries that they had. And they also do a lot of surgeries. We have a friend who's a doctor at this place at the World Bird Sanctuary, and they do some a number of surgeries on birds so that they can be released again and have a happy, thriving life. But Eagle Day was when there was this presentation about eagles, and we got to get some photo opportunities with some of the eagles. Those photos are on Blue Sky right now. Yeah, so that was one of the fun things that we did this past weekend. G Money says that they like the t-shirt that I'm wearing, and yeah, this is a t-shirt that I got from Meeple Source. We way before we kind of had a bunch of rules about how Stonemaier Games trademark names can be used or whatnot. We talked to Meeple Source. We weren't making t-shirts at the time, so we agreed to let Meeple Source print these shirts, and I really liked the shirts, and so they've continued to print them over the years, and I've been okay with that. So yeah, this is from Meeple Source, this Stonemaier Vineyard t-shirt established in 2012. So yeah, we're in our 13th year right now as a company. Let's see. Garrett is asking about the Automa packaging for Tokaido. Am I able to share it? I don't have it handy, Garrett. It is a little bit like the Tapestry. Actually, no, you say it right here. There's an envelope similar to Tapestry Fantasies and Futures. It is. It's very similar to that. Yeah, kind of a white envelope with the Automa content for Tokaido and the new panorama cards that we made, which are the same as the old panorama cards, just a different composition, different material. And so that will be available on our web store next Wednesday, April 2nd, along with the full version of Stonemaier Tokaido. So you can get this version of Tokaido includes the solo mode inside the box, or if you already have Tokaido, our solo mode is completely compatible with it, and you can just buy that solo mode from our web store. Jeff says, hope you had fun at the family's hockey games this weekend, and let's go Blues. Yeah, the Blues are doing pretty well, St. Louis's hockey team. So hockey, I'll talk about this really briefly, but last week, my cousin was in St. Louis for the ACHA hockey tournament, hockey championship, 2024-2025 hockey championship. ACHA is high-level club collegiate hockey. So these are players that are very close to playing on D1 teams, Division I teams of hockey, but maybe they didn't quite make the team, or they got cut from the team, or they just don't want that level of commitment, and so they're playing on a high-level club team instead. And my cousin Jason, he plays for the Air Force Academy, and he was a senior, and they made it to this tournament this year. And so we went to a game on Wednesday, and they had won their first game. They won their game on Wednesday, and they won their next game, which meant that they got to go to the Final Four. Also in St. Louis, so they were playing like hockey games every day, back to back. And they won their Final Four game against a stacked team from Michigan, and they had to go against another team from Michigan for the finals. And it was as thrilling as it was heartbreaking in the end, because this team worked so hard. And obviously I was rooting for my cousin to do well, and they came up a little short in the end. They were up 3-1 after the second period, and they ended up just getting, there was a flurry of goals from the other team in the last period. I'm not someone who follows hockey, but it was kind of just a reminder of what it's like to watch a sport when you really care about someone who's on the team and how they're doing. And so it was, like I said, both thrilling and heartbreaking to watch this, because I know how much it meant to Jason and his teammates. But it also meant a lot to the other team too. So hats off to Hope College for winning the ACHA hockey tournament this year, the championship. And while Jason is done, Jason's graduating, hopefully his team will continue to gel together and maybe even come back next year for the tournament. We'll see. Anthony says Tokaido has a soundtrack release on YouTube. Yes, I put that on YouTube just last week. This was a soundtrack that the original publisher of Tokaido, Funforge, I believe they commissioned it a while ago, maybe for the digital version, maybe for the collector's edition, but it's ours now because we own all the Tokaido stuff. And so I put it on YouTube for free for anyone to enjoy. Anthony says, will this be a thing moving forward? For example, apiary Vantage. I'm open to releasing. I have a couple answers to this, Anthony. Here, I'll leave your question up. So the Tokaido was a unique situation in that the soundtrack already existed and we were then sharing it. For some of our digital partners, there are soundtracks, but they often sell those soundtracks. So it isn't something that we'd offer for free. Like there was a Wingspan soundtrack. I think there's a Scythe soundtrack too from Scythe Digital. But are we pursuing that? Are we commissioning new music for our games? The answer is largely no. Although for any of our teaser trailers, you'll notice this for Vantage recently, for Stamp Swap, I believe, for Finsspan. My brother-in-law, Joel, his hobby is composing music. And so Joel has done the music for these teaser trailers. So it's not a full soundtrack, but that is original music that you're listening to in our teaser trailers over the last few years, dating back to maybe Libertalia, maybe a little bit before that. Yeah. Patrick is asking about April 1st. So I do want to say for April Fools this year, we don't have a product. We don't have an April Fools product, largely because April 2nd is Tokaido Day, and Tokaido is not a joke product. It is a very real product that we are very passionate about. And so that is our main focus for April 2nd. However, we will have an activity that we are going to be releasing for April Fools. I'll probably talk about it in Monday's blog post. I'll post about it on April Fool's Day, and I'll talk about it in our newsletter and our livecast. In fact, next week's livecast will be somewhat related to this activity that I'm talking about. So feel free to stay tuned to our newsletter next week before I jump on this livecast. So Darren, I was trying to understand your comment here, but Darren has an idea for a contest. All of us who have played ARCs secretly guess which element or mechanism in ARCs would be my favorite. I think that's the his you're talking about. ARCs is encrusted with clever mechanisms, so we'd have a huge list to choose from. Darren, I've actually already done a video about ARCs. I did a video around 6 months ago, so you can just go check out that video if you want to see my favorite mechanism in the game. I won't spoil it since you seem to want to guess, but feel free to guess, and you can go check out my ARCs video from last year. Yeah. Oh, this is cool. Ray says that he just bottled his wine. Ray has been saying that he's been working on wine. In fact, I have something wine related to show, Ray. I'm glad you brought this up. And he says he put the bottles down in his cellar. He just needs to open a bottle periodically to see how they turned out as they age. Do you have a favorite type of wine? Well, Ray, I don't have a great answer for that question, but I do have a related answer, which is very recently, someone on Instagram saw that I have been talking about how I guess long story short, I don't drink a lot of alcohol. I drink a little bit, but not much. And this year I've gotten really into mocktails. I like the fun of like kind of crafting a cocktail, but I don't need the alcohol part of it. I'm in it for the flavor, and I don't want their alcohol doesn't always have a great impact on me or a great effect on me. So I've gotten really into mocktails, and someone saw on Instagram that I post about this, someone who happens to be creating not a mocktail company, but a non-alcoholic sparkling wine company. And they were very kind to send me a few bottles from their original first batch. And I tried one this past weekend because we had a cookbook club with some friends, and I shared a bottle with my friends. And one of the other bottles, I brought it here to show you. This is this non-alcoholic sparkling wine from Nori. This is the company that makes this wine. So this is What I'm doing right now is not a paid promotion, but they did send this to me for free. Normally, I don't accept things for free, but I was very curious about it. And, they were very kind to reach out. And yeah, it has been something that I've been really interested in lately. So we tried one of these bottles of Nori. They sent me 3 different flavors. And I can honestly say that I really enjoyed it. I don't know if it is exactly, I don't know if it would replace wine for many people, but it had I don't know, it had a very similar vibe to drinking wine. It looked like wine. It tasted fairly similar to wine. It is grape based. And, it has that, the fun of the part of the fun, I think, of the experience of drinking wine is savoring the flavor of it and the depth of it. And I got that experience from drinking Nori. So while it doesn't quite fit into my mocktail category, it is a fun thing that I'm glad to have in my fridge. And yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. So I wanted to give a shout out to Nori for sharing that. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. Let's see. Chad says, how's our search for a light, low rules game going? So yeah, recently we put out the word that we are looking to publish one game in the same vein as Just One, Codenames, Telestrations, Caution Signs, So Clover, Blob Party, that style of game where you get to be clever in multiple ways. The rules kind of fit on the back of the box. Very simple rule set, very easy to teach, very easy to get to the table. And so we're doing a search for that. There's one, we've seen 2 games. We've accepted 2 prototypes that we've played. Both have been very good, and we haven't made a decision about either of them yet. I don't know if we've truly found like the game, but we have found 2 games that we've enjoyed quite a bit so far. So even just the search process has been fun and engaging. Related to the wine, I'm glad Steve just asked about the chocolate of the day. I was just at the grocery store before this live cast, and for some reason, as I was about to check out, I saw a Crunch Bar at checkout, and I was like, I'm kind of feeling a Crunch Bar. So I picked up a Crunch Bar for myself at checkout today. So that will be my chocolate of the day. Maybe not the whole bar, hopefully, if I have some restraint. Garrett says, have you seen all the vitriol on BGG and other places about the new quacks? It's been really troubling to see, but the publisher has been a class act in the comments despite all the bad faith posts. I saw the announcement for quacks, and I saw a few posts mostly about maybe the art for the box. I didn't go much deeper than that. I don't like to get immersed in vitriol and aggression online. But I am, Garrett, it is neat to see that the publisher has been a class act in the comments. That is, I think, tough to do when you're being berated, and that's awesome to hear that they're able to do that. Yeah. Oh, cool. Joshua says he recently subscribed to the Raise the Bar Mocktail monthly subscription box. It's been great. Joshua, thanks for the heads up about that. Yeah, I kind of enjoyed just buying different types of non-alcoholic botanicals and liquors to experiment with them. But I think it could be fun to do one of these monthly mocktail boxes. I've heard of a few of them, and I'll make a note of that and check that out. If you feel like sharing, let me know what you've enjoyed about it in particular compared to just making mocktails on your own. Let's see. So Ray does ask, what's my favorite mocktail? So lately, I don't know if I have a clear favorite. Oh, that's hard. Well, I have a few different favorites so far, actually. But it really varies from day to day. My most consistent thing that I've been making is essentially just a frozen fruit smoothie with a splash of non-alcoholic rum. I have enjoyed that. I've been gravitating a little bit more towards the Ritual brand rum. I also really like the Ritual brand whiskey, and I really like the gin, I think it's white grapefruit botanical gin from Cero Cero. That's Cerocero. That for a gin and tonic is really good, like really nice and refreshing after a day of work. So that's those have been my favorite like non-alcoholic liquors so far, and mixing them with different things. There's a big variety of cocktails. In fact, with the whiskey, there's one called the Armchair Detective, a mocktail called the Armchair Detective that has honey and the whiskey and a little bit of bitters in it, a few other things too that I'm forgetting, but that one's really good as well. Oh, cool. It looks like Tom Holland has gotten into non-alcoholic beer called Barrow. Sounds like he's a recovering alcoholic, so it holds a special project for him. Yeah, I enjoy beer at like a cookout. But on like a weekly or daily basis, I don't get as excited to drink beer, non-alcoholic or otherwise. So, but I am curious to try it. I think it's neat that he got involved with that. Let's see. Mark says Tokaido goes live on April 2nd. Does this mean we aren't getting any April Fool's product? That's correct. And there no April Fool's product. Just our focus this year is on Tokaido. Let's see. Joshua says, I love Clank, Arnak, and other deck builders, and recently started looking at Dune Imperium. Would Stonemaier make a similar deck builder? You know, Joshua, we have not published a deck building game, which is kind of amazing. Like, there's so many different deck building games from so many different companies, and we don't have one at Stonemaier Games. I have tried to design one unsuccessfully several times. I think it is likely at some point in the future, given especially given the amount of innovation we've seen in the deck building field, I think it is likely at some point in the future we will have a deck building game, whether it's from me or from another designer. I'd love to try to figure it out again someday. It's a neat puzzle to solve, whether it's maybe deck building or bag building. I don't know, one of the two. Paul says, with the amount of second edition games such as Parks and Trekking the World, have you ever considered making a second edition of a particular game? Not that they need it. Paul, your comment kind of hints at at my reasoning. I've tried to make the first edition of our games such that they don't need a second edition. Maybe at most we have to fix a few cards in an expansion or something like that. I went through several editions of Viticulture, though. Viticulture is a game of ours that we had Viticulture, and then we had the second edition, and then we had the Essential Edition, which has been the only version of that game for the last 10 years. And after that experience, I was like, I really want to make sure to do everything we can to get this right out of the gate. And I don't know if we've ever really gotten it perfectly right, even with like Tapestry. Tapestry, we had a revised Civ pack come out. But doing a full second edition is not something I really get excited about doing. I really want to get the game right out of the gate, maybe make minor improvements. I think the tricky thing with the second edition is that if it is a game that is successful enough to have a second edition, it also means that a lot of people already have the first edition. And that's a really tough, it's tough for me to kind of wrap my mind around how it feels like something I'm doing. I don't know if it hurts the people who have the original game because they still have the original game, they can enjoy it. But I think it puts people who already love the game in an uncomfortable position because they have a game that they enjoy, but then you put out a version that you're saying, oh, it's even better. Otherwise, we wouldn't have made it. I don't know. As you can tell, I'm stumbling over this a little bit because it is a situation that I'd like to avoid if we can. And so far, we've avoided it, and I'd like to continue avoiding it if we can. I think there are always different circumstances for why you might consider doing it. And actually, one of them related to us a little bit is Libertalia. And even Tokaido is not really a new addition. We made some small changes, but the gameplay, the art is the same. Libertalia is a game that we completely revisited for a new edition. And that I thought was unique in that I loved the original Libertalia, but I thought it could use some improvements and be an even better game. And so it was a fun puzzle to try to make that what I thought and what Paolo thought would be an even better game. And that was a unique situation in that the original game was not a Stonemaier game. It was a game that the rights had reverted to Paolo. We went to Paolo and said, hey, we would love to make a Stonemaier version of Libertalia using our design ethos. Would you be up for that? So yeah, game to game, but for a game that we've already publishing a second edition is something that I'd really like to avoid if we can. Let's see. Chad says, what was the most difficult part of trying to design a light, low rules game? This is a puzzle that's ongoing for me. I'm still trying to experiment with it from time to time, and I have tried to experiment with it. It's a good question, Chad. What does make this type of game so difficult? I don't know. I think there are multiple aspects of it that are difficult. It's tough to make a game that offers each player a different type of puzzle. Like in So Clover, you have the puzzle of writing down clues, but also the puzzle of solving clues, while making it a unique game that hasn't already been created, while making the rules light enough and simple enough that you can teach within a minute or fit onto the back of the box, and at the same time have it be highly replayable and that you want to return to the game again and again. I think all those things add up to make it a very difficult puzzle, especially with a streamlined rule set. KT says, any chance Scythe Digital will get a revival with all the expansions? The Steam version is so good. So we are still holding out hope that the Knights of Digital will have enough funds to add to Scythe Digital. I think they would probably be open to maybe someday selling the game to another company to perhaps do that if another digital publisher wants to do that. But the current owner of Scythe Digital, the developer in charge of it, they currently do not have the funds. They have the funds to maintain it, but not the funds to expand it. And that even includes us splitting our Board Game Arena funds for Scythe with the Knights of Unity. So we'll see. I'd love to see that too, but currently it's not on track to do that. The Sea Otter says, watch my video on Alte. Oh, Alte, yeah, I talked about that yesterday. Makes me want to play it more at Geekway Prime in May. Yeah, we played that at Gamers Ranch recently and had a good time with it. And that reminds me, since your name is the Sea Otter, that I did have some other animal-related topics today. I talked about hockey. I talked about birds at the World Bird Sanctuary, fish and cats. So last week, my mom came to town for this big hockey tournament that my cousin was in, and she brought my little nephew, Aaron, who loves animals. And we took Aaron to his first cat cafe, a cat cafe in St. Louis called Meow House. We went with some friends and their kids. And went with Aaron. And it was really adorable to see Aaron and the other kids play with the cats. And of course, it was adorable to see a bunch of cats all over Meow House. We have, I think, 2 cat cafes in St. Louis. Maybe there's others that I don't know about. Meow House and the Cheshire Grin, both great cat cafes. The Cheshire Grin needs kids to be older than 7 or 7 and older. And that didn't fit for Aaron. He's a little bit young. But it was really to see these cats. I did refrain from adopting another cat, which was always tempting to do, to see if Walter needs a friend or wants a friend. I don't really know that. It's hard to tell with Walter. But we did go to a wonderful cat cafe the other day. And then fish, the last animal-related topic today that I can think of, is that this Sunday in the greater St. Louis area at a place called Great Rivers, the National Great Rivers Research Center, I believe is the full name. We are holding a Finnspan event with Great Rivers at their facility from 2 to 5 o'clock. It's completely free. You can come, and it's kind of centered around playing and learning Finnspan. If you already know Finnspan, you can just come and play Finnspan. If you want to learn it, you can come and we'll teach it to you. And at the same time that we'll be playing Finnspan, there will be fish researchers that will go around and hang out, maybe play along, or maybe just hang out for a little bit. And they will share some information about the fish that you're playing as you're actually playing Finnspan. I'm really excited about that. I've played Finnspan a lot, but I haven't played it with a marine biologist or a fish researcher. So I'm really excited to have that experience. There is an event on the Stonemaier Games Facebook page where you can go and indicate that you are attending or thinking about attending. That would be great to know, so we can kind of have a feel for how many people are attending. But it's looking like it'll be a really fun event this Sunday, March 30th, at the Great Rivers research facility here in St. Louis, or the greater St. Louis area. It's in Illinois, technically, and from 2 to 3 o'clock. So check out that event if you're interested in hanging out. I'll be there. My coworkers, Dave, and I think Susanna will also be there, just to share our love of Finnspan and fish with you. Josh says he's interested in the Vantage design timeline. At what point in the 8 years did you go from foundational development, when you knew you had the core right, to refinement? Well, Josh, Vantage was kind of a tough puzzle because I needed a fair amount of content to feel comfortable developing the core gameplay of the game. So it was so I spent a lot of time, most of the first like 5 to 6 years, on the world creation. And I was thinking about brainstorming, doing like very light tests on what the mechanisms could be, but I was much more focused on the world building and populating the world with all the 7,000 different actions in this world. And then it was around year 6 or 7 where I started, I think it was year 6, where I built a minimum viable product to basically enough mock-ups of a variety of cards that I could test it, both the location cards and the types of cards that you discover, so I could test the game and see how it actually worked, or how it actually could work. And rather quickly, I discovered that one of the core things I discovered is that I wanted players to be successful when they took actions. I wanted there to be consequences and repercussions if you didn't do well in the action. Like if you tried to do a difficult action and you you stumbled over some rocks while you were doing so, or it took more time than you thought, or it kind of hurt your spirits, your morale while you were doing so. So there are consequences to not doing well on an action, but you are going to be successful. I found that while I was testing this action system, that it was really discouraging to invest your turn into an action and just have it fail. That was not fun. So this was something that I discovered and played around with around year 6, and then moved forward with that for years 7 and then in year 8. Continue to mold it and craft it during the playtesting process, of course. But yeah, that was around the timeline that I was working on. But I do want to stress that I've been thinking about Vantage in every spare moment of my time for the last 8 years. And so even though there were many times where I wasn't actively testing the action system, I was researching action systems for other games, and I was trying to think about how they could apply, or how they should apply, to the core system of Vantage. Jeff says, how's my Geekway Games hoping to play list going? Less than 2 months now. I would say I have about 15 games on my list. I'll need to whittle that down probably a little bit to a top 5 or top 10, Jeff. But I am very excited, and I think Geekway signups are closing soon. So if you're thinking about attending Geekway to the West, it is a great convention in St. Louis that's focused just around casually playing games for 4 days. I'll be there, ready to casually play games with anyone and everyone who wants to play games with me, especially ideally some of the new to me games on my list. But I'm open to playing anything. And yeah, just really looking forward to that. That's in mid-May in St. Louis. And here we go. Joshua was recommending the Raise the Bar Mocktail subscription box. And he says, there are many NA spirits and they are very hit or miss. I have experienced that too. My favorite part of Raise the Bar is that they introduced me to different spirits and mixers. That way you get to try different things to figure out what is the right fit for you. I like that, Joshua. Oh, and Joshua also says they team up with a mocktail designer to curate 3 mocktails each month with a theme, and Barrow was featured recently. Oh, that's cool. That's really neat. Let's see. Steven says, what kind or level of internet discussion has previously warranted you considering revised components for a Stonemaier game, like the revised civs? The revised civs are a good example of that. That's a good question, Steven, because a lot of like house rules are discussed. And usually when I see a house rule, I think, okay, I can see why that might be more fun for that specific player. But in general, I'm glad that we have the rules as written in the game. I think this is the best experience for most people. On rare occasions, sometimes we start to see a pattern, sometimes even data, more than just anecdotal feedback, but also data indicating that something is a little off about a specific card in a game or a specific combination of abilities. And usually what I do then is not necessarily go for revised components, but sometimes offer an official variant on our FAQ. We don't have many of them. There's one on Red Rising involving banishing cards. There's a couple combinations inside that we recommend not using in competitive play. And Finsspan, we actually did, I know Finnspan is very recent, but we did add one for Finnspan, which is that in the rare case that you actually run out of the deck of cards, we recommend that instead of shuffling your entire discard pile to reform the deck, that each player can pick and keep one card from their discard pile and put the rest of the cards back to form a new deck and reshuffle that. So there is a deck of cards. It's very rare that this happens, but it can happen. And it was one of those things where we're like, okay, this probably isn't going to happen. And then it did happen. And we want players to be able to keep at least one card in their discard pile that they probably are hoping to bring back into their hand and play later on. So that type of thing doesn't really need a new component. It's just an official variant on our website. And we'll put those rules in the expansion for Finnspan as well. Jay Zargo 3 says, I didn't know you were looking for a light, low rules game to publish. Yeah, there's some information about it on the submission page of our website. Is this something Stonemaier will do in the future or more of a one-time thing? The intent for this is to be truly a one-time thing. Like, it is not the type of game that we typically publish, but it is the type of game in general that I find that is great for all sorts of circumstances. And I'm always turning to games from other publishers, and I love that other publishers have them. But I would be really proud and happy for Stonemaier Games to have one game in that category, one awesome, truly awesome special game in that category. So yeah, that's why we're looking for one. Michael says, what's your opinion on the need to upgrade this Finnspan Deluxe fish with googly eyes? I did see a photo the other day of someone who's done this, and it was delightful to see. So I don't know if I can fully recommend it because it does take a lot of work to put those googly eyes on, but it is a neat effect if you want to do it. Edward says, so my video this past weekend was about games that share something in common with Tokaido. Edward says, have you made a top 10 video for games with an unconventional turn order, like Patchwork, Citadels, Viticulture, etc.? That's a good question. I've done a video about games with time as a resource, and oftentimes that relates to different turn orders. Actually, I think I do have a video, Edward, about turn order. Let's see if that is actually true. I don't know if it's a top 10, but I think it is a video discussion about turn order. I'll search for turn order on our YouTube channel. Here we go. Yeah, it's an older video. You get to see older Jamey or younger Jamey, 6 years ago. It says it's top or 10 plus turn order systems in tabletop games. And I think I talk about in that video things like the pros and cons of having turn order that isn't clockwise or is in real time or simultaneous. Maybe there is no turn order. In fact, after that, Edward, I designed this game, Smitten, that's on the wall over here. Smitten, a core mechanism of the game is whose turn is it? Whose turn should it be right now so that we can win this cooperative game? Yeah, that's something that I played around with since filming that video. Maybe I need to revisit that video. Melissa says, will we get any more sneak peeks on Vantage before the release? Melissa, I'm going to continue with the monthly updates for Vantage. And so I have an update planned for mid-April, mid-May, mid-June, however long it takes until we are ready to launch Vantage on our web store. Oh, cool. Mark says that there's a board game event organized by a retail store in the Philippines that invited David Gordon, one of the co-designers of Finsspan, to come. And David is actually coming to that. And Mark, that's really cool that you'll get to meet David. You'll have to let him know that you have some connections to Stonemaier Games through your work with Rolling Realms as well. David will be happy to hear that. Okay, let's see. I'll get to comments in a second. Let's see if there's any topics that I'm missing that I really wanted to bring up today. Actually, I do have some questions for you, so this is a good time to throw those out there. Some other things that I've been up to. I've been doing a lot of playtesting for different products and going through blind playtest reports for a couple different products as well. And I did a post about moderation the other day, and it was interesting when the fairly big post about the value of moderating online communities to prioritize their health over virality. And one of the things I realized as I was writing it, that most of we hear moderation and we think like removing comments that don't belong, that aren't consistent with the group guidelines. But I realized that most of moderation, like that's less than 1% of what moderation is. I think most of what I think about when I think about moderating is simply being present and involved in communities, whether those communities are online or offline. I'm talking mostly about online social media communities here, but that was like a big takeaway for me from this post. After I wrote it, that I was like, oh, like the actual like removal of comments is such a tiny drop in the bucket compared to the overall participation and presence of people in general, but also in particular admins and moderators. So that's a takeaway from my post on Monday. Two quick shows that we're enjoying recently. One is The Residence. Another connection to birds is The Residence is a murder mystery set in the White House, a fictional version of the White House, but also actually the White House, and has a good comedy to it. Also, really good murder mystery so far through 3 episodes. And the main character, the main detective, is a birder, and birding comes into play in every single episode so far. The main detective talks quite a bit about birds. So if you love Wingspan and love birds, I would recommend this show called The Residence on Netflix. We're also excited to finish up Deal or No Deal Island season 2. I believe the finale is today, so we're excited to watch that. Anyway, on to my questions for you. 2 questions. One is, I want to film a video that presents some advice to people about designing their first game. So not necessarily designing a game for publication. These aren't like general, this is specifically about your first game. Like what types of advice if you've tried to design a game, what do you wish you had known for that first game? What type of advice was useful for you? specifically for the first game. So this isn't like general game design advice. This is for the first time that you are like, okay, I actually have an idea for a game and I actually want to follow through and work on the design for it. What advice do you think is particularly useful? That is something that I want to talk about soon. It's something that I think I have some information to share about it, but it's such a specific part that is a little bit distant for me because it's been a long time since I've designed my first game. That's why I'm asking for your advice and help if you have anything for me to think about for this video that I'm planning to make. Okay, Horde of the Board says, what kind of games share a DNA with Vantage? More if you like these games and you probably like Vantage. Well, overall, I need to do a video about that. That is a video I do for every game. I did one for Tokaido this past weekend. Vantage, I think the short pitch, the shortest version of it is that it is Breath of the Wild meets Time Stories. Yeah, that's the shortest pitch of it. But I love the idea of maybe doing a video on that a little bit sooner because usually I wait until very close to the launch of a game before I do that video, but I'm happy to do that video sooner and I will make a note about that. 10 games for Vantage. Yes, I have a long list of games that have influenced Vantage in various ways, including Sleeping Gods, The Seventh Continent, Role Player Adventures a little bit, One Deck Dungeon. There's a lot of games that have influenced it in different ways, and I can highlight what those games have done to influence the design of Vantage during that process. Nate says some light games technically have scoring, just one, caution sign, so clever, but the gaming community seems to ignore it and just plays for fun. Would you publish a game with no scoring? So Nate, here's the key for me. I agree. When I play these types of light, short, largely cooperative games, I don't care about scoring. I care about being clever and having fun with my friends. However, in my opinion, for them to qualify as a game, I think there needs to be a win condition and there needs to be a lose condition. I don't think that needs to involve points or scoring. But even though I often play these games as activities, I like just a little bit of pressure of knowing, hey, we are about to win or we are about to lose, especially if it's a cooperative game. So that for me, it isn't a hard requirement, but it definitely is a preference for that style of game for me. Horde of the Board asks, when is Vantage coming out? Vantage is currently in production and we are on track to launch it on our web store this summer, immediately ship right after that. Have it ready, have it available at Gen Con and have it available for retailers right after Gen Con. That is currently the plan, but it's in production. So there's a lot of uncertainty now. That's why we're not asking for your money yet. We're going to wait. We are going to wait until we have it at our fulfillment centers before asking you to pay for it. Sam says, do you assume, and if so, when the board game industry will get hit by the Trump tariffs? Sam, okay, I'll focus on that part of your comment. So the tariffs created by Trump and his presidency so far have already affected the board game industry. Yeah, they have affected anything that has come into the U.S. starting in early February. The tariffs are a tax on U.S. companies who are bringing in products from China. So we make our games in China. We had some shipments, including Tokaido, arrive in the U.S. from China in early February, and we did pay tariffs on those on those incoming those products. They include Tokaido. They include some reprints that came in at that time, and we will continue to pay tariffs because as a U.S. company, we are legally required now to pay a 20% tariff on the manufacturing cost of those goods as they arrive in the U.S. We are not increasing our prices, but you will see this on our web store for Tokaido. There's a place at checkout on the U.S. web store on Tokaido, starting on April 2nd, where you'll be able to see how the tariffs impact us. And if you want, you can cover the cost of the tariff. So if you are someone who supports tariffs, we highly encourage you to pay for the tariff cost at checkout when you check out for Tokaido next week. I am not in support of tariffs. I would rather not pay 20% tax on things that we haven't been paying taxes. I mean, we pay plenty of taxes to the U.S. government, just not tariffs. And I would continue to. I would love. I'm happy to pay our taxes. Not as happy to pay tariffs. Jonathan says, given the volume of printed materials in Vantage, do you expect it to be the highest priced game in Stonemaier Games history? Actually, Jonathan, I've said a few times, Vantage will not be our most expensive game. So that's really all I've said about the price for Vantage so far. So Dean, I like this. How to know what to throw out and what to keep design-wise. I like that, Dean, for advice for someone's first game. Keep versus cut. Raising Morningstar says, what's a good approach of having an exciting story in an open world without running neither into bad story design or into bad open world design? It's an interesting question. For me, there's a couple different answers to this question, and I think it depends on whether or not the game is a campaign game or a non-campaign game. Vantage is a non-campaign game. It's a game that you sit down and play for a few hours, and then you pack it up and you're done, and then you start all over the next time you play. So that's part of it. The other part of it is there's a choice from a design perspective of, are you telling a story that the players are participating in, or are you enabling players through what you've created for the players to tell their own story, the story that they want to tell? And that is the approach I took with Vantage. Vantage is all about player freedom, players having the choice to decide where to go, what to do, and how to do it. And so the story is theirs to tell. There are a lot of written words in Vantage, but any given turn involves reading at most like 1 or 2 sentences. It's very little text. So I tried to create a world, a living, breathing, complete world, a complete planet. It's a full planet. So in Vantage, you can walk completely around the planet, north, south, east, west. You can walk completely around it. It might take quite some time, but it is possible to do that. And so I focused on the creation of this planet, this world, and giving players kind of building enough character into this world so that players could have memorable storytelling experiences of their own story as they played. So for me, it was all about the player freedom in a non-campaign game. Let's see. Okay, Haley says, they're still designing their first game. I'm struggling to get things from the concept phase, but it's exciting. So maybe that's something that I could try to talk about, Haley, like how to get past the concept stage, getting past concept. Mark says, don't overthink it, act on it, and just make it happen. This is something that should be my mantra, but I tend to overthink the process and couldn't get things out of the gate. I can relate to that too, Mark. In fact, I really enjoy the brainstorming phase of creating a new game. I have fun with that. But you're right. Sometimes you just need to act on it and actually get it to the table. This kind of goes along with Haley's comment of getting it past the concept. George says, what about actually building the prototype? So easiest ways to build a prototype, how to be cost effective, what digital analog tools. So prototype building tools. I like that, George. Yeah, thank you. Valerie says, will Vantage be featured at Gen Con or any other conventions that Stonemaier Games attends this year? Can it be demoed? Is it easy to teach? So we're hoping that it will be ready in time for Gen Con. We're currently on track for that to be the case. And it will be featured there for sure. And it can be demoed. The approach that we're taking for Vantage is that for the types of demos where someone just stops by for like 5 to 10 minutes to interact with the game a little bit, we're just going to have them take a few turns of the game and then leave that game state exactly as it is. And so someone else who comes up to the table can then take the next few turns for that character and so on. So it's and the nice thing about Vantage is there's no rules teach at all. You just have to walk someone through a turn and they understand the rules for the game. So you can just walk up to the game and make a decision, and the person who's demoing can show you step by step what it looks like to take a turn based on that decision. So yeah, I think it's incredibly easy to teach because it's the type of game that you are teaching, you are learning as you are playing. And so yeah, I think it's very, very easy to teach. Let's see, Steven's advice for first game design: be flexible, be willing to explore all feedback to remake the game at least twice, discover the core. That's a great point. And part of that is maybe don't get hung up on what you think the game is, especially after you play it and discover that the game might be something quite different than what you envisioned it. So flexibility, that's the key word here. Thank you, Stephen, for that one. Urfro says, I've been thinking about trying board game design, so I'm excited about this first game design video. Quick question. When designing a game, do you find yourself starting with a theme or the mechanisms? For me, I I mix both almost right away. Like I have a long running list of game themes that I'm excited about and game mechanisms that I'm excited about. And every now and then I decide, oh, I actually want to work on one of those, whichever it may be. But immediately I am also then looking at the other list and thinking, okay, I have this exciting idea for a theme. What mechanism makes sense for that theme? Or I have an exciting idea for this mechanism. What theme makes sense for that mechanism? So I think it's a good question, but I think the key is that they get mixed together so quickly that where you start doesn't necessarily matter. It just matters about what you're excited about and then pairing that with the other half of it. But it is a good question. I think a lot of people wonder about that question. So I'll write down theme versus mechanism as the starting point. It's a great question. Okay, Ray says, I made a game that technically functions on a table that I played once with his wife and once with his brothers. Afterwards, I had a really busy time at work and wasn't able to work on it for a while afterward, and I haven't returned to it since. What's your advice on returning to something where your motivation is stalled out, especially from the passage of time? That's a great question, Ray, for especially, well, really for any game design, because sometimes I think time is nice, having a little bit of time and distance away from a game. For that, though, I think taking notes is really, really important so that you can return to the game and make sense of what it was at that time. I think time can also be an indicator that maybe you're not as excited about that game as you thought, and that's okay too. But if you know, so I think that can be a sign right there. But if you know you are curious to continue to explore the game, yeah, I would actually say those two things. I would say having the notes helps you return to it, and having the time can be an indicator that maybe you want to work on something else instead of returning to that one game. And I'll think more about that, but that's my first instinct. Christopher says it well here. I'll repeat this. If you're someone who supports the tariffs, we encourage you to pay for them. that is how I feel about them, Chris. I don't know if that's entirely fair, but that is certainly how I feel about them. Yeah. Christopher also says, for someone's first game, they need to, when having that first playtest, realize that the game will not be anything close to its final form. That is great. Yeah, that goes along with the flexibility, but kind of just understanding that first playtest probably isn't going to go well, and being okay with that. I think that's good. First playtest won't go well. That goes for someone's first ever game or the first version, I think, of any game for any designer. Maybe there's some designers that come out of the gate hot, but I'm not one of them. Miles says, I think for a first-time designer, it would be nice to have a list of things to focus on early on and maybe more importantly, things not to focus on. I like that a lot, Miles. Miles mentions art as something to not focus on. So list of things to focus or not focus on. Yeah, Miles, I think, yeah, I think one of the pitfalls I see of designers sometimes is getting really caught up in the kind of the art and the world building side of it, as I did for Vantage. But Vantage wasn't my first design. Whereas those things are largely irrelevant for the game design, the core part of the game design. And they can change significantly as you create it. So I totally agree with you. Joshua says, I always struggle with getting something to the table to test the idea. Maybe advice on how to focus on a particular aspect or mechanism, or how to physically create a quick tabletop concept. Yeah, it goes again with what Haley said, getting past that idea of a concept and moving forward with actually something. Sam says, where to find playtesters beside family and friends? That's a good question, Sam. Because I think part of it of early playtesting is leaning a little bit on family and friends and then going beyond that. But playtesters is a good thing to talk about. Yeah. Let's see. Duat says, Vantage is confusing for me. I've been looking at Vestige and Vindication. Oh yeah, too many V's in this. Vantage is quite a different game from those games, but they do all start with the letter V. That is true. Julie says, first game design, ways to adjust or fine tune for challenge or complexity. Yeah, keeping, I like that, Julie. Adjusting, challenge, complexity. even deciding how complex the game should be is part of the challenge. Monica says, congrats on the Big Germ sponsorship. Yeah, that's the disc golfer that we have officially sponsored that we are very excited about. We have a World of Wingspan t-shirt that we're working on with Big Germ that I'm really excited about. Let's see. Your first advice for designing a board game is designing an expansion or module for an existing game. Do you have any BGG content for other games? Yeah, that's one of the things that I have on my list. That's a great idea. Of one of my recommendations for first-time designers is don't design a new game, but instead design an expansion for a game that you already love, or even a rolling realm for rolling realms based on a game that you love. George says, iterate as long as needed, but know when to stop and keep those key design decisions to remain. I like that too. But know when to stop. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, George. Edward says, don't waste time making it pretty. Yeah, it goes back to the art comment from Miles. It will change. I would also recommend learning a program like Nandeck if you're making cards. That definitely makes the process a lot smoother, so you don't have to update every card one by one. I'll make a note of that for Nandeck. Yeah, great advice today for first-time designers. Aaron says, if a first playtest won't go well, what would you look for as a successful first playtest? I'd actually, I view that as a successful first playtest, a playtest that doesn't go well, because that is it's a good moment to have to realize that what you have in your head for how the game will play out is different than what actually happens at the table. And that's okay. And that shows the value and the importance of actually getting the game to the table and not getting too caught up and having it caught up in your head. Yeah. Valerie says, maybe advice on how to take criticism well for that first play test. I'd be curious to know where designers even start. Yeah, how to take criticism is a great thing to talk about. Yeah, I'll just write it down like that because I don't think there's a better way to say it. How to take criticism and be open to criticism, and even know, yeah. Oftentimes I start a playtest by saying like, this is why the purpose of today's playtest is to try to break the game, or the purpose of today's playtest is just for me to watch and experience what it is like to play the game. Sometimes there's no greater point than that, than just like actually having it on the table in motion. Yeah. Luke talks about how explaining how to play your game. Horde of the Board says, keeping a diary with notes. I highly recommend taking notes as you play. Aaron says, be careful not to allow feature creep to settle in from possible insecurities. Yeah, that's a great point. And even as like one of the things that I'll encourage is to research other games, but sometimes it can be tempting to like try to pull all these different things from all these different games. That could be a type of feature creep as well. LB Jeeper says, I would say for your first game, let yourself buy some basic aids to help you visualize your ideas, such as different dice, drawing tools, cubes, or even learn to use some free software. I like that. That goes along with prototype tools, variety of bits. I'd also say, even for the first playtest, an early playtest, be open to iterating on the fly. I think I talk about that a little bit in a different video, but it's maybe worth talking about here. Chat talks about using Excel and numbers apps to keep things organized, to keep all that content organized. But I would say actually don't, at least for the early stages, don't get caught up in formulas and balance and things like that. So there's a kind of a tipping point in a game design process where you start to care a lot more about that, but not as much early on. As you play. Yeah, and even I would talk about the concept of an MVP, a minimum viable product of, you don't need to design, if you have a game that you're hoping will have 200 cards, you don't need to design 200 cards to have the first playtest. You just need enough cards to actually play. Even in a playtest that we did the other day, related to this, I don't know when I'm working on a game and I don't know when the game should end. And that's okay. It's okay not to know every little aspect of the game. When we play tested it, I said, okay, we're going to play this for an hour and see how it feels after an hour. It might feel like we need to play a little bit longer. I feel that we've already overstayed its welcome, but it's okay to not know everything about the game the first time you play it. The end. Sorry, I'm taking some notes here. Some great points here today. Let's see. Monica says, I want this shirt. So this shirt is from Meeple Source if you want to get this shirt. Shane says that they're playing Rolling Realms campaigns, going through the 63 cards we have and to see who wins each week. That's awesome, Shane. Lots of different realms at this point. And thank you for getting them all. I appreciate that. The Infinite Dude says, the Expeditions playmat is fantastic. Who is the playmat manufacturer? Are the other Stonemaier Games playmats similar? Yeah, we at this point make all our playmats with Panda, our Canadian manufacturer they have their main facility in China. So yeah, we make them with Panda. I'm glad you like them. Garrett always has good digital game recommendations. River Towns, heavily inspired by My City, and I do love My City, and a very chill game. Awesome, Garrett. Thanks for that recommendation. I will look it up on Steam right now. Steam River Towns. Let's see if they have it. Yeah, River Towns is available on Steam right now, including a demo, it looks like. Yeah, River Town. I like when games have these little demos so I can actually try it out. Yeah, I'll add that to my wish list. Someone else recommended a town building game, I think called Dawn Folk the other day. So I added that to my list. I just rarely actually play digital games, but I appreciate the recommendation anyway. Miles says, I think make sure to have a link to your Ideas is Worthless article. I remember really appreciating that article. Yeah, I have an article Miles is referring to called Your Idea is Brilliant, Your Idea is Worthless. The idea being that it's great to have ideas, but execution is everything. Like the idea, there's so many ideas out there in the world that are never executed on, but the value is in actually executing it. Even if it doesn't work out, the value is still in the process of going through trying to make something that you have an idea for. So Miles, you're right. Talking about not just an idea. Yeah, I totally agree. Matt says, is there a mechanism or game type that you wouldn't want to design? A party game or dexterity or anything like that? You know, Matt, I have a few types of games on our submission guidelines that don't particularly excite me as a publisher or as a designer, but I'm generally more focused on like what I am excited about rather than excluding things that I'll never be interested in. Like, for example, I think there are lots of games with trains and zombies, not often together, but you know, lots of zombie games, lots of train games. So in general, I'm not excited about a zombie or a train game, but I bet there's a version, I bet there's a different take on a train game or a different take on a zombie game that actually might really excite me someday. So there's no category of game that I can think of off the bat that I'm just like, I would never work on that, or I'd never even consider designing that, or never consider playing that. Yeah. William has some advice here. First time game advice, find community like Board Game Geek, Board Game Arena, local game design groups, publisher discords, conventions, family and friends. The gaming community is so supportive for new designers. I love that, William, focusing on the community aspect of it. And also, I would say keeping in mind with that community that that if you do decide, and I hope that you decide to be active in the community. In fact, anyone who's watching this video right now, you are participating in the game community. I think that's awesome. That to be aware that to truly be, I think, a part of the community means how do I want to say this? I'm trying to say, like, don't just try to take from the community, but also give to the community. Like, be there because you want to be there for the community, not because you want something from the community itself. I think one way to make a pretty bad first impression is to join a bunch of game-related Facebook groups for the first time and kind of blast information about your game, rather than just kind of like easing your way into those groups and getting to know them and getting to know the feel and the vibe for them. And then every once in a while, maybe you talk about your game if you have a game to talk about. Yeah, that's a non-eloquent way for me to say that. Mark says, any spoiler plans for Rolling Realms Live Play 80? Mark, I'm happy to talk about it. One thing, so what we traditionally do for the 10th play of Rolling Realms, these live plays that I do every month, is we use fan design realms for them. And we might do that again. I'm open to doing that. I'm always open to doing that. And I know, Mark, you've designed some great ones since game 70. So certainly open to doing that. One suggestion that Carell had that I liked was maybe finding someone or 3 people who want to join me for kind of a head-to-head matchup for game 80. So someone would maybe join me on the live stream for game 8, round 1 of game 80, and they would be on camera. They would have their game on camera, joining me live for it, and then either they or someone else would join me for round 2 and round 3. So it would essentially be the same thing as normal, but one other person would be on camera. So that is something I'm going to toss out there. I think logistically we can get it to work on StreamYard. And it's one of those things where if at the last minute someone doesn't show up or they aren't available, they can't get their camera to work, that's okay. I can continue to do it just by myself, and that person can chime in as they're playing. So that's one thing that we're considering for Game 80, just to mix it up a little bit. Valerie says on the train theme that she thought of Railroad Inc. She loves that game, and it's great for kids. It is a great game. Yeah. We have a Japan. We have, what is that? A Next Station Tokyo. We have that on our shelf. Oh, we got that in Japan, but still haven't actually played it. We played on Board Game Arena, but not in person. So Darren, I replied to your comment earlier about ARCs. I've already done a video about my favorite mechanism in ARCs, so you can check that out and just watch the video. It's there for you to. You can guess if you want what my favorite mechanism is, but the video is available for you to check out. All right. Yeah, I think Everett says zombie train's coming to a story near you. I think there's like a Cthulhu on a train game that's coming out. Joshua says trains and brains. Christopher says, do you personally have access to the Vantage realm yet? That would be a fun treat for Game 80. I do, but we're not going to reveal it this early. Yeah, not quite this early. I wonder if at a certain point we'll have enough Stonemaier. In fact, we probably do. Maybe this could be Game 80. It could be a round of all Stonemaier promo realms that have been released since the original Rolling Realms. That one had 11 games in it. I need to check to see if we have 9. In fact, Mark, you might know this better than I do. Do we have 9 Stonemaier promo realms that were released after the original Rolling Realms game? Because they aren't in Rolling Realms Redux. We have other games in that one. So if we had 9, that could be a thing to do for Game 82, or maybe Game 90, and that one could include Vantage too if we don't quite have 9 yet. Horde of the Board Benchers, there's Agricola with zombies coming too, so like farming with zombies. Yeah, I think sometimes those crossovers can be fun. Silent Wolf says, have you thought of moving Vantage to a computer game or a mobile game? Currently, I mean, Vantage is, largely based off of the freedom, the open world of Breath of the Wild, which is the digital game. I think there are already like plenty of wonderful, great open world digital games, and also plenty of great open world tabletop games too. Most of them are campaign games. Vantage is unique in that it's not a campaign game. But right now, I am definitely focused on the tabletop experience and having people enjoy Vantage on a tabletop. Maybe in a few years, we'll consider something, a digital version of Vantage. But right now, for a while, we're just going to focus on the tabletop version. Garrett does confirm that we have at least 9 promo realms for Stonemaier games that have come out since the original Rolling Realms. So that might be, here, Garrett lists them right here. Here we go. Rolling Realms. Was that not in the original one? Yeah, that did come out afterward. Rolling Realms, Libertalia, Expeditions, Wormspan, Smitten, Finnspan, Apiary, Stamp Swap, and Tokaido. That's 9. Yeah. Yeah, maybe we'll do that. That's a pretty easy way to do Game 80 if we want to do it that way. Head-to-head could be fun too. But yeah, if it aligns up with exactly 9, that might be a good time to do it. Here, Mark says Libertalia, Rolling Realms, Expeditions, Apiary, Stamp Swap, Finnspan, Wormspan, Smitten, Tokaido. So we actually do have exactly 9. Maybe this is the time to do it for Game 80, because Vantage would be after when I would do Game 80 in April when we'll have Tokaido. Why don't we do that? I think that makes sense for Game 80. And then maybe for Game 90, we could try this head-to-head idea that Corel had. So we'll do an all Stonemaier promo realm matchup for Game 80. Anyway, I've gone a little over time here. Thanks for hanging out a little bit extra today. I appreciate it. I think I covered all the topics. And if you have any other thoughts about advice for someone's first game design, let me know in the comments, and maybe I'll include that in my video about that topic in the near future. Awesome. Have a great day. Enjoy your chocolate of the day if you have one, or your non-alcoholic wine of the day if you have that. And I will see you next week for April Fools and the Tokaido launch on our web store. Take care. Bye.